Okay, in 2018, Chloe Zhao presented her film The Rider. It was kicked around film festivals. I think they recorded it in 2016, went around film festivals in 2017, got a lot of awards. It was very quiet kind of a film, very aesthetic kind of a film, and very endearing and very kind of melodramatic, melancholy. This is her follow-up film, Nomadland. It's getting a lot more accolades, and I think she signed on to do another film, The Eternals, right?
Well, what's interesting, she's doing these two very quiet, very character-piecey kind of movies, and then up next she has Marvel's The Eternals, which spans like thousands of years, and it deals with Thanos and superheroes and gods living among us, and like it's just kind of an odd translation from those two, but it's also interesting because she is getting some early acclaim from at least the people who've seen cuts of The Eternals. So it's kind of a great ride for Chloe Zhao. And of course, we're recording this episode before the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
So we don't know if the film actually has won anything. So I guess we'll just do two versions here. Congrats on all your wins, Nomadland. Hey,
we kind of know it's going to win something, right? We kind of know it's going to win something, right?
Yeah. So we're talking Nomadland from Chloe Zhao today on Kyle and Nick on Film. Join us. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and thanks for our listeners. Thank you for subscribing. If you're interested, leave a like or comment. You can also follow us on Twitter at Kyle and Nick on Film. We're also on Twitter, and eventually we'll get into other social medias and feel free. And thank you for all our viewers and our subscribers. Nomadland.
Nomadland. Today we're talking Nomadland. When the U.S. gypsum plant closed down in 2011, the town of Empire, Nevada died with it. Former substitute teacher and resident Fern takes to the nomadic lifestyle, living out of her van, moving from town to town in search of money-making opportunities. And along the way, she befriends other nomads and deals with an internal struggle to hold on to a past that is full of pain.
So this movie is actually kind of full of contradictions to a character, that she wants to be free and be able to move around, but she's bound by this location that no longer exists anymore. And she doesn't want to be bound by a house, but she wants to have some kind of setup of a home.
Yeah. And Fern is this kind of like, she's a frustrating character because you are spending all of your time with Frances McDormand, who does a great performance, by the way, but she's also one where you want her to just embrace this new family. You want her to embrace these opportunities that come in, not just to make money, but also to like continue to develop herself and not sink into kind of like closed offness.
Yes, in the movie she regards herself as houseless. I'm not homeless, I'm just houseless. And it's a way of her pitch that it's not so much an idea that we have to feel pity for her, but we want to understand why. And I think she even understands the contradictions, that she's just going to live in her vehicle. And why not? This is America, I get to do what I want. And to survive, she does continuous part-time seasonal work, which you have to drive to those locations.
And again, like that's part of that contradiction too, is that she's let go of so much in her life, but she continues to hold on to things that she needs to let go.
Once again, Kyle does it better than I do.
But it's like the plate thing, that plate, when you see them, the plate is almost a Chekhov's gun. If Chekhov had a plate in his house, because you know that this plate is important to her, and you see it, and it's that delicacy of something that she's carrying around when she doesn't have a lot of space. She doesn't need these nice like little plates but they carry the memory. And that's her biggest problem, is that she is so focused on her memory and on her past that it's almost like she's unable to overcome the problems that she's facing in her current future.
Wonderful. Put. Just like The Rider, Chloe Zhao is going to use the same cinematographer. I think his last name is Jacobs. And here he does a lot of exterior shots that seem like paintings throughout the film. And when we do people, we're actually very close. It's very claustrophobic. In fact, I like the almost like Sound of Metal when they're in their trailers, that is very confined space, but we're just going to set the camera and we'll let it go from there.
It's a solid photography choice, because we are dealing with people that are constantly in claustrophobic situations, living in their vans, living in their RVs, and the again, like that contradiction showcases there too, because their whole world is their life. They can go wherever they want, and yet they're still kind of closed in terms of where they can exist within that. And what's great too is that I didn't know, watching the film, the first time I figured it out after that was that they used actual nomads, actual
legitimate people that participate in this life.
Linda May, who plays Linda May, is a nomad. And I think she was actually the character that we followed in the Nomadland book. I think she's the real story that we followed as her. And then Swanky, of course, playing Swanky. And really, like, outside of McDormand and outside of David Strathairn, we don't have a lot of actual characters that are played by actors. It's more kind of extras brought into the film. And that's what's interesting to me, is actually how solid they are at performing.
Right.
I guess they're just kind of documentary style. Like,
this is what they do. Another base, because we're really winning with the aesthetic visual, the cinematography, and the characters and how they interact. And here, Fern wants to be close to people, but she doesn't want to be intimate. It's almost like, I've done that before, I'm done with that, I'm moving on.
Yeah.
As well as, she can't let go of what happened in the past. It's almost like that's her only single identity, and then we're just going to live day to day from there. There's a lot of contradictions because she can't really handle being herself. She needs help from a lot of other people with her tires and people trying to tell you have to be more self-sufficient, even though she's struggling with that.
Yeah, and it's that lesson that she's trying to teach herself, is to take care of things on her own. But then you also have, this element of she relied so much on her husband and on her husband's job. I mean, substitute teacher does not bring in a lot of money.
No, we know that, right? We both know that, right?
But, it's one of those areas where she relied on her husband so much that now without him, she doesn't want to have to rely on anyone ever again.
Yeah.
And that's why it's tough to watch her getting close to other people and having this opportunity to share in an experience, but she's so afraid that she'll end up relying on them, and she can't handle that. And that's, again, one of the things where I get so frustrated watching her in this movie, because I want her to make that switch. And throughout the entire film, she gets close to it, and then goes the other direction. It's almost like watching Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems, where every time he gets close to making the right call, he turns and makes one that you just kind of don't want him to make. So,
or I would say it was watching Abbott and Costello. Look, guys, let me explain. You're not really, It's a lot of that you're shouting at the camera or the film because it's not going. You don't see the logic that it makes sense to them. Yeah. It doesn't make sense to us.
There, the level of dramatic irony in a way where it's like you're yelling at the screen. It's not a horror movie, but we're still yelling at the screen. Go left, and they go right. David Strathairn is in this film, plays another nomad that gets kind of close to Fern, but again, not close enough. Strathairn is one of those actors that I first became aware of with Good Night and Good Luck, I think back in 2006.
Yes.
And I continually see him in big budget films and small budget films.
Like LA Confidential.
Constantly popping up and permeating. And he always adds a punch to every role that he is in. And he's great in this film too, because he is playing so reclusive, because he's in that nomadic lifestyle. Like, he's kind of like a small character in the film that you could blink and miss at times. But he adds an extra, not punch, but like soft tap.
That's right. Yeah, he usually does that with when he's not the lead role of films, like LA Confidential, or really, really powerful stuff in like Dolores Claiborne, where like, oh, okay. Yeah. So and I like because it's almost like he's part of the background. He's part of the environment, which a lot of these nomads are kind of. You see, they're part of the aesthetic view. That is this more of a road movie? Is this a landscape movie, or is this basically a viewpoint or a viewpoint of social commentary? Yeah. Or it could be all of them together.
Well, and that's kind of the interesting thing about the layout of the film. It's one of the things that I kind of have a flaw with, or I just don't like about the movie as much, is that I feel like it's a little lost in trying to be a slice of life character piece, and it ends up being like 30 slices of life. Yeah. And I wish there was a little bit more focus in the struggle of Fern, and like we're following her character arc, but I just kind of think it gets a little lost within trying to embrace her character and the nomad lifestyle and all these other kind of elements. I don't know if it really finds its focus throughout the narrative, but it's a very engaging film nonetheless. I'm really happy with the runtime too. This thing clocks in at like an hour 48, and you expect these movies, especially when they get to be like that recognized film, they're going to clock in like 220 or 215 and just kind of like overstay their welcome. This movie doesn't do that. It moves at a pretty nice clip for being a stop and watch kind of a film.
So all of it that he said is the same criticism people had for the writer.
Okay.
So Chloe kind of sits there that little niche of that, and that's my complaint with the writer is that we're not really going anywhere with this. We have really intimate scenes that are really powerful, and we have great visuals, but we don't have really a direction. Where are we going to go? We don't have really a resolution as well.
And it's an element that is prevalent in that kind of a work, in that we're allowed to kind of just stop and breathe.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's such a stressful lifestyle if you're not, like, especially if you're not living it, because you don't understand it as much. You're trying to kind of understand why anyone would make this choice, but most of us have never been put in the situation where we have to make that choice.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what makes the stop and watch, the breathing doesn't really happen for me, because I'm just kind of like stressed the whole movie.
Right, and then the whole point of the lifestyle is so you don't have to be bound to all the things that they regard as stressful.
Mm-hmm.
But there's certain aspects of survival that you have to learn to be much more self-sufficient. You have to take care of your vehicles, and you have to take care of your own body, rather than going to physicians and stuff that you can't really handle. And it's, one problem after another, continue with participating in this lifestyle.
Yeah. The van, which McDormand named Vanguard, that's the character name. The van in the film is a very interesting piece too, because it's a set and it's also a prop, and it happens to be one of those elements where a car is almost more important than a house, because you can sleep in your car, you can't drive your house, and that's what this Vanguard is kind of in the film, is that it's an element of, we don't have a house, but we do have a place to stay. And what's interesting about it is, going into the film, as soon as you see that van, this van is not going to have an easy journey in the film as well. Like, as even if looking at this inanimate object as a character, if we don't have a house, we can sleep in the van until the van breaks down. Yeah. And it's kind of that element of, like, we're watching McDormand have things pulled away from her. Fern is losing these elements, and again, that self-sufficiency part where she could reach out, and she chooses not to.
Reminds me of that. I got to see the Dave Matthews Band Van at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that they toured with. They were a touring band, road band for over 10 years before they got famous. And that van is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and how beat up that van is, and how so many people had to cram in there and go to one gig to the next. And when I watched Nomadland, it reminded me that, almost like being a musician is kind of this lifestyle, being on the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I have a fondness for watching this film. I watched it with my wife, and we actually spent our honeymoon in South Dakota, and we actually stayed at many of the locations that were used during Fern's.
Well, you got to go to Wall Drug, right?
Yeah, so we went to Wall Drug. We actually stayed at the actual campground that she worked at. And in fact, we could point out where our little, like, staying spot was. So there was kind of like an emotional resonance to that South Dakotan kind of world, and especially being from Minnesota, we kind of see North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota as kind of like our little, like, tri-state area, of course. So it's nice to have that kind of connective tissue. It's a beautifully shot, like, it's a beautiful area to make a beautiful shot that really works right down. And as you point out, cinematography, landscapes, and beautiful photography where you could just take a frame out and post it on your wall.
Yeah, she goes see Mount Rushmore by herself.
Yep, yeah, I know. That moment when she walked over and
takes a selfie by herself, where Chloe's going to do, especially when it's a personal intimacy, because she moves the camera for landscape, but she doesn't really for a human. She sets the camera still, and they just see the action of the person, and you realize how lonely this kind of, because everybody goes to Mount Rushmore. You don't really go by yourself.
No, in fact, I was taken to Mount Rushmore when I was 5, and then during my honeymoon, I took my wife to Mount Rushmore. It's kind of like a you bring someone else in.
Yeah, you bring
she gets to make her own choices, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she gets to, make her choice to be with someone when she wants to be, or be alone when she doesn't want to be. And I watched a couple of videos from nomads that appeared in the film.
Okay.
Some testimonials about their life, and what they kind of said with the film was, a few of them said, some of us chose this life, and the film kind of plays it off as if everyone's kind of forced into it a little bit more.
Yes.
She's like, some of us did choose this because we felt that we'd been betrayed by, kind of the American dream itself, or like the way that our life was supposed to go. A lot of them made the choice after the financial crisis in 2008. They were like, we could have kept pushing to try and save our homes or save our jobs or do this, and it eventually came to a choice for some of us. Well, we don't want to live according to someone else's rules.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting idea. I was reading that Chloe did not want to make her film overtly political. She wanted to stay out of the politics of it and just kind of show the life.
Yeah.
I think that was a mistake, though. And I think the reason why is because all film, is eventually seen through the eye of the current political landscape.
Yeah.
And I think that to not add a little bit of yourself, or at least introduce the elements and let people make their own choices, kind of makes the film feel like, again, like the slice of life. And maybe that focus would have been keyed in had we chosen to recognize the fact that for these people, the American dream wasn't really working.
It failed, right?
Yeah, it failed. It's comatose. We need to wake it back up, kind of a thing.
And once again, that's my criticism for the writer, where she investigates these people that, an individual that lives on a Native American reservation, and shows the trappings that there's really no escape. There's really no way they can get out. They're confined, but they really don't investigate the reasons why, or the trappings of the political commentaries for that film as well. Just really focus on the trauma of this person being a really successful horse trainer and rider that got injured being in a rodeo.
Yeah, that's true.
Once again, he follows the criticism of the writer. So Chloe's very stick to her, I would say a niche, but she's not really creating her own genre either. It's kind of her style.
Yeah, this is definitely a Zhao style that we've seen now permeate through two films. And that's why, again, after watching Nomadland for a second time, I'm like, how is this going to translate to a Marvel movie? I'm very curious about this whole thing. I can't wait to see it for that reason.
You're doing Eternals, you're doing this, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that when she was filming Nomadland, of course, and like she walks by the theater showing the Avengers, and you're like, oh.
I would say she would be much more fit as a director, especially when I've seen the writer in this one, to do Logan.
Yeah, to do something of like the low budget, kind of allowed freedom of that piece. That's why it's very odd to me that she's doing a film that's got like big special effects and aliens and creatures, like and
more
stuff.
than 3 people in the movie.
Yeah, so this movie just kind of like, for all the reasons it's not a superhero movie, Nomadland is more interesting because we're knowing where she's coming from here. So it'd be great to revisit this movie after having seen what she does with a lot of money.
I remember criticism of a lot of people who were not actors in this movie were surprised that Frances was an actress.
Yes, I was reading actually about that. Yeah,
because she was so authentic, and her response was like, "Well, good, I'm an actress.
Yeah,
this is what I'm supposed to be doing."
Well, it was that scene that she has with Bob Wells, who plays Bob Wells in the film. The scene that she has where she's talking about her husband, and he said at the end of that scene, like, "Thank you for sharing that moment with me. I really appreciate you kind of like being real with me about that." And she was like, "Oh, my husband is Joel Cohen. He's a director. He's very much alive." And I think like that's kind of the beauty of it, in a sense, where like the people she was working with, probably some of them didn't know who she was, so they weren't like starstruck. They weren't having trouble like acting against her.
Right.
They didn't realize she was an Academy Award-winning actress.
They probably viewed it almost as like a documentary.
Yeah. And one of the people even pointed out after, because she was an extra in the film, and she said when I talked to Frances, she was a very kind and very like lovely person, but that she also was in character. And so she didn't realize until after filming was done how completely different she was, because she was embodying Fern. I mean, she went so far as to, she did live in a van for a while as an actress to try and get method into that life before she basically was getting exhaustion because she wasn't sleeping very well.
Well, I had to sleep in my truck in college because I didn't really have I had to do jobs. And so it's hard to drive all the way back home for an hour, and then you got classes in about 4 hours, so you just sleep in your truck, and then you go to college, so... Does that count? Yeah. Well, I mean,
I was never a nap guy, so basically, like, I would probably have just died of caffeine overdose because I just kept sucking down coffee. But no, that's kind of that's that element, though. It's just kind of a weird thing, and so much so that we view, as a society, the homeless problem, but don't want to do anything about it. And the same thing is seeing this film, hopefully we feel the necessity to help make the American dream and the American lifestyle livable for more people, so we don't have people trying to get off the grid because they just can't fit into the system. And hopefully that's what this movie does. I hope it opens people's eyes, because I knew about like the nomadic lifestyle to an extent,
right?
But didn't live in it like I did here.
From where we live in Minnesota, when you go to travel to South Dakota, you do see some camps on the Highway 35, So it's not something that it's there. You can't really ignore it. We have to find something to do. But it's also trapping, because it's supposed to be the American dream that you get to free. You get to travel. There's so much space to travel. Yeah. But then you're kind of, you're creating more problems if you do that.
Yeah, and that's the irony of, and I guess the contradiction, as we keep coming back to, is that they're kind of embodying the American dream, because they abandoned the perceived American dream.
Yeah.
That's the layers that the film kind of gets into that gets very confusing at times, because really just trying to wrap your head around that can kind of just jog your mind a little bit, because it is confusing lifestyle to live that way. You feel that freedom, but there are also things you can't do when you live that way. And there's also, they said, I wanted to avoid paycheck to paycheck, so I went and did this. But then if your car breaks down,
you are
living paycheck to paycheck.
So.
The other thing I really wanted to point out before we end here is, my other big criticism about the film is I don't feel like it, because they didn't want to get political with it, I feel like there's certain elements of it that don't dive in more, that don't really breach in. She spent some time working at Amazon, and currently we know kind of some of the Amazon problems of working in these businesses.
Right, they kind of nicely gloss over that.
Yeah. And I know that the book doesn't. The book gets into a little bit with basically how you can take advantage of people because they need the money, and utilize that. And so the time that they spend at Amazon in the film, I kind of expected it to go somewhere more. Yeah, and instead it almost feels like a commercial when that's in there.
It's almost like product placement. Yeah, it felt like product
and placement. So that would be the only other thing that kind of by not choosing to get political and by not choosing to really dive into and focus on kind of the problems that the characters are facing, there's certain things that feel left out. And that's why for me, we were talking about this ranking of how we would rank certain Best Picture nominees this year. And that's why Nomadland, it's a good movie. I really enjoyed it. But it's also not my strongest, because I feel like there's certain avenues where they just couldn't go, and I wanted them to go there.
All right. So, have you seen Nomadland?
Yeah, let us know your thoughts down.
Oh my God, are you participating in the culture? That'd be good if you.
Oh yeah, let us know on that. There's actually quite a few nomadic people that are doing YouTube, because it's kind of a chance to reach out and get the conversation going.
There you go.
So we're not currently doing that. We're in the studio, but let us know if you've seen the film. It's currently streaming on Hulu. It's available on home video right now as well, and it may or may not have won some Oscars. So let us know in the comment section down below. Did you enjoy this film, or did you not? You can also like this video. You can subscribe to get our content every single time we drop it. We're doing 2 videos every single week. And you can check out the Patreon link down there below as well. That's patreon.com/KyleNickOnFilm. Join up, and you can help us kind of pick the different films we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, metaphorically fix our tire.
Yeah, there you go. Fix the tire. Once again, everyone, I'm Kyle Goethe. You can find all my film reviews on goathefilmreviews.com.
I'm Nick for the St. Paul Filmcast, and we'll catch you down the road.